Yorkshire County Cricket Club is one of 18 first-class county clubs within the domestic cricket structure of England and Wales. It represents the historic county of Yorkshire. The club's limited overs team is called the Yorkshire Vikings. Yorkshire teams formed by earlier organisations, essentially the old Sheffield Cricket Club, had major status, and so the county club is rated accordingly from inception, i.e., classified as an unofficial first-class team by substantial sources from 1863 to 1894, classified as an official first-class team from 1895 by Marylebone Cricket Club, and the county championship clubs, classified as a list A team since the beginning of limited overs cricket in 1963, and classified as a major 2020 team since 2003. Yorkshire are the most successful team in English cricketing history, with 33 county championship titles, including one shared. The team's most recent championship title was in 2015, following on from that achieved in 2014. The club's limited overs kit colours are purple, black and yellow, with Mazars as the main sponsor. Yorkshire play most of the home games at Headingley Stadium in Leeds. Another significant venue is at North Marine Road Ground, Scarborough, which houses the annual Scarborough Festival. Yorkshire has historically used other locations, including Bramall Lane, Sheffield, which was the club's original home, Horton Park Avenue, Bradford, St George's Road Cricket Ground, Harrogate, The Circle, Kingston upon Hull, and Acklam Park, Middlesbrough. History. Earliest cricket in Yorkshire. The earliest certain reference to cricket in Yorkshire dates from 1751, when local matches were held in Sheffield and a game took place on a soon after Monday, the 5th of August, at Stanwick, near Richmond, between the Duke of Cleveland's She and Earl of Northumberland's She, the same teams having earlier played a game at Durham. Sheffield Cricket Club was probably formed about this time, and there are references to Sheffield matches in Derbyshire in 1757 and at Leeds in 1761. A club was formed in York in 1784. Bedale in North Yorkshire was a noted centre in the early 19th century, but cricket in most rural areas was slow to develop. Yorkshire cricket became centred around Sheffield, where it was more organised than in the rest of the county. From 1771, Sheffield played semi-regular matches against Nottingham Cricket Club. Nottingham was generally the better side, and Sheffield sometimes played with more players to give them a greater chance of victory. Nevertheless, the Sheffield player Tom Marsden was regarded as one of the leading players in the country in the 1820s. Cricket increased in popularity after a trial match was played at the purpose-built Darnall New Ground in Sheffield to evaluate the new style of round-arm bowling. After this match, many new cricket clubs were formed in the county. In 1833, Yorkshire was first used as a team name, although it contained 11 Sheffield players, for a game against Norfolk at the Hyde Park ground in Sheffield. The name may have arisen from a need to match the status of Norfolk as a county rather than a city. There were some differences in the organisation of the Yorkshire team vis-a-vis those called Sheffield, as it included 3 amateurs while Sheffield teams were entirely professional. Yorkshire, as such, played intermittently over the next 30 years, but was not organised in any formal way. Some of their opponents were Sussex in 1835, Manchester in 1844 and 1845, and Kent in 1849. Also in 1849, Yorkshire played against a Lancashire team for the first time, though it was rarely a Sheffield v Manchester match. By 1855, Sheffield and Yorkshire were playing at Bramall Lane. Origin of club on the 7th of March 1861, during a meeting at the Adelphi Hotel in Sheffield. A match fund committee was established to run Yorkshire County matches. The committee was made up from the management committee of of the Bramall Lane ground and representatives from clubs willing to pay £1 to the fund, but the committee was unable to persuade other clubs that it was not seeking to promote Sheffield cricket, and a lack of funds prevented some matches being played in 1862. By this time, there were several cricketers with good reputations and the county team was one of the strongest in England. Consequently, on the 8th of January 1863, Yorkshire County Cricket Club was formed. Membership was unlimited and cost a minimum of 10s and 60. Like most first-class cricket clubs of the time, Yorkshire relied on private patronage, with administrators paying to serve and moneyed enthusiasts acting as ready match sponsors. The majority of players were freelance professionals who were paid a usual match fee of £5, from which all travel and accommodation had to be paid. Travel could be arduous, living away from home could be rough, and sometimes the match fee was not enough to cover expenses, especially if, as was often a problem with early Yorkshire cricketers, the alehouse was a temptation. The first club president was T.R. Barker, Mayor of Sheffield, although he probably never attended any meetings. Michael Ellison was the first treasurer, and at some point early in Yorkshire's history, he assumed the presidency. However, most official accounts record Ellison as Yorkshire's first president. Joseph B. Washington became the first of 4 long-serving secretaries in 1864. The first captain was Roger Idson, a professional cricketer. The objective of the club was to play matches, either in Sheffield or in any other towns of the county according as arrangements may be made. Quote, however, other locations in Yorkshire were unable or unwilling to host fixtures in the first years of the club, and Bradford and York continued to attempt to organise games in competition with Yorkshire, sometimes causing confusion among other counties. Attempts to form an alternative Yorkshire team continued intermittently until 1884, although by 1873, most clubs accepted the authority of the Sheffield-based county club. 1863 to 1882, Yorkshire played its initial first-class match against Surrey at the Oval on 4-5 and 6 June 1863. Surrey scored 315 runs, to which Yorkshire replied with 257. Surrey were bowled out for 60 before the match was drawn. The team recorded a first win in the following match against the strong Nottinghamshire team, and although they lost the return match 1-2 and lost only one of the 4 matches played in the first season. In 1864, the team won 2 and lost 4 of 7 matches. In 1865, the club and players became involved in a dispute. 5 players, Roger Idson, George Anderson, George Atkinson, Joseph Robotham, Ed Stevenson, refused to play against Surrey. This concerned a controversy that arose in 1862 when Idson and Anderson played for an All-England team against Surrey at the Oval and the Kent. Bowler Edgar Wilshire was repeatedly no-balled for using an overarm action by an umpire whom, they claimed, had been appointed by Surrey specifically for that purpose. Anderson stated in 1865 that he would not play against those who have combined to sweep us from the cricket field altogether if they could. The dispute was about a point of principle and centered on the right of bowlers to use an overarm action, which had been legalized ahead of the 1864 season. Consequently, with several important players missing, Yorkshire did not win a game in 1865 and were forced to cancel some matches for the 1866 season. The Yorkshire Committee and the players came to an understanding in early 1867 after the players apologized, but Anderson never represented the county again. With the player dispute resolved, Yorkshire won all 7 of the matches in 1867, defeating Surrey, Lancashire and Cambridgeshire. As a result, the sporting press proclaimed Yorkshire to be the champion county for the first time. The following year, John Thewlis scored the first century for Yorkshire in first-class cricket, against Surrey at the Oval, in 1869. Joseph Robotham became the first man to score 2 centuries in a season for Yorkshire. Yorkshire won 4 games in both 1868 and 1869. One sports publication regarded Yorkshire as equal champions in the latter year. The team won 6 out of 7 in 1870 to be acclaimed as champion county again. Much of Yorkshire's success in these years came from the bowling combination of George Freeman and Tom Emmett. Following Freeman's retirement from regular cricket after 1870, Yorkshire declined, winning fewer games in 1871 and 1872 as Gloucestershire rose to a position of dominance in county cricket, driven by the success of W.G. Grace and his brothers. Conscious of the need to strengthen the club, Yorkshire instituted a Colts team of young players, but replaced Idson as captain at the end of the 1872 season. Robotham, another professional, assumed the position. For the 1873 season, county cricket moved a step closer towards an organised competition when the counties agreed qualification rules for players to be eligible for a team. For many years, this was considered to be start of the county championship. However, the counties did not organise a formal competition and the champion county was still decided by the press. Some publications disagree. Despite containing a side with effective players, Yorkshire did not perform as well as expected over the next seasons. The bowling attack was strong. The team contained some experienced players and critics believed Ephraim Lockwood to be the best professional batsman in the country. In 1873, Yorkshire won 7 games and lost 5, and for the following season, Luke Greenwood replaced Robotham as captain. The team had an improved record, but although second only to Gloucestershire, Yorkshire lost heavily in both encounters between the teams. Greenwood retired, Robotham resumed the captaincy for 1875, and Lockwood took over in 1876. The team did not perform particularly well in either season, but the worst performance came in 1877, winning 2 games but none of the last 10, and losing 7. This placed them 8th out of 9 counties. Tom Emmett then took over as captain, but the following 2 seasons brought mixed results as the team displayed inconsistency, often losing to teams they should comfortably have beaten. Derek Hodgson, in his official county history, suggests a lack of discipline in the team throughout these years was to blame. Contemporary reports suggested the team drank too much alcohol to be effective. The players also suffered from public attention, receiving generous hospitality at times which impacted on the performances. In these seasons, the team often began well only to lose form later in the season, and the Yorkshire Committee was reluctant to replace the experienced cricketers with younger players. However, off the field, Yorkshire became increasingly successful, and the profits made by the club paid for improvements to be made to the Bramall Lane ground and increased player wages through the introduction of travelling expenses and talent money where good performances were financially rewarded. An influx of what proved to be effective new players saw Yorkshire finish second to Lancashire in the unofficial championship for 1881. But more significant was the debut for the county of Lord Hawke, then aged 21. The team faded again in 1882, and Hawke, who had refused the captaincy earlier, was appointed club captain at the end of the season, the first amateur to hold this position. Previous captains had all been professionals: Roger Idson, Joseph Robotham, Luke Greenwood, Ephraim Lockwood and Tom Emmett. Hawke remained in charge for 28 seasons until 1910, during which time the team won 8 county championships. 1883 to 1918. In an obituary tribute, the editor of Wisden Cricketer's Almanac said that Lord Hawke's strength of character was tested when, As a young man on leaving Cambridge University, he undertook the responsibility of captaining the Yorkshire side, composed at the time of elements that were not entirely harmonious. Owing to Hawke's tact, judgment and integrity, he moulded the 11 into the best and probably the most united county cricket team in England. Yorkshire.To was widely seen as an idiosyncratic team and, though Hawke's primary task as captain was to lead the team to fulfillment of its potential, his biggest challenge was to unite the club's geographical and social factions. At the end of the 1882 season, in addition to appointing Hawke as captain, the committee agreed to reorganize itself for the first time since the club's foundation and began a process which eventually made the club representative of the whole county and not just Sheffield. Hawke succeeded Emmett in 1883 and remained as official captain for 27 years. But at first he was careful to take his time and did not make too many changes. Yorkshire improved in 1883 and finished second behind Nottinghamshire in the unofficial county championship. However, the remainder of the 1880s was disappointing for the team and its supporters. Kilburn said that Yorkshire continued to be an unreliable side, mingling brilliant achievement with miserable performance. The basic problem was that the older players were past the peak while younger replacements did not make the progress expected. A poor season on the field in 1889 was reflected by reduced income and changes were made with several good new players being introduced. These included Jack Brown, David Hunter and Stanley Jackson, while Bobby Peel was becoming increasingly effective as a bowling all-rounder. They were followed by John Tunnicliffe, David Denton, Ted Wainwright and George Hurst. Hawke worked on fielding practice and the players became specialized and efficient as fielders. In 1893, the club's initial reorganization was completed and was finalized after Ellison died in 1898 and Hawke assumed the club presidency as well as captaincy. When Washtiam died in 1902 after being club secretary for 38 years, the county offices were moved from Sheffield to the more central location of Leeds. It was in 1893 that the team finally came good and Yorkshire won the first official county championship. Hodgson wrote that it was, perhaps, the first confirmation of Hawke's striving for teamwork and discipline. Yorkshire achieved second and third places in 1894 and 1895. The team continued to develop as Brown and Tunnicliffe established an effective opening partnership backed up by Denton and Jackson, while Peel, Wainwright and Hurst carried the bowling attack. Yorkshire historian R.S. Holmes described Yorkshire as prodigious in 1896, when they won the second title with some outstanding batting performances including a championship record total of 887 against Warwickshire. Hawke began the practice of paying the professionals over the winter, initially £2 per week. The scheme was later modified to include bonuses. Peel was sacked in 1897 after appearing drunk on the field and was replaced in 1898 by Wilfred Rhodes, who took 141 wickets in his debut season. In the same season, Brown and Tunnicliffe established a record partnership for the first wicket when they scored 554 against Derbyshire at Chesterfield. Yorkshire won the third championship in 1898 and narrowly failed in 1899 when only a defeat late in the season by Kent prevented the retention of the title. Between 1900 and 1902, Yorkshire lost only twice in the county championship, both times to Somerset, and won the county championship in all three seasons largely thanks to the two outstanding all-rounders Hurst and Rhodes. When Joseph Wolstenholme retired as club secretary after the 1902 season, he was succeeded by Frederick Toone, who held the post until his death in June 1930 and formed a successful liaison with Hawke. Toone and Hawke worked together to improve the terms and conditions of professional players' contracts. To 1914, they were paid £5 for a home match and £6 for an away match with a £1 win bonus. Players who had received the county cap were obliged to join the Cricketers' Friendly Society and were paid a winter wage of £2 a week. Yorkshire remained a strong championship contender through the 1903 to 1914 seasons and won a further 3 titles in this period, also finishing as runners-up 3 times. They won the 7th title in 1905 after being 3rd and 2nd in 1903 and 1904 respectively. In 1906, George Hurst achieved a unique double-double by scoring 2,385 runs and taking 208 wickets. The 1906 championship was decided on the last day of the season. Yorkshire lost to Gloucestershire by a single run and were overtaken by Kent, who won the last match against Hampshire by an innings. Having finished 3rd in 1907, Yorkshire went through the 1908 season unbeaten and bowled Northamptonshire out for 27 and 15. The aggregate score of 42 being the lowest in English first-class cricket. Yorkshire finished 3rd in 1909 but then dropped to 8th and 7th in the next 2 seasons before a recovery in 1912 brought the last title. Before the First World War, while Hurst, Rhodes and Denton continued to excel, Yorkshire gained much in the last 4 years before the war from 2 new all-rounders, Major Booth and Alonzo Drake, both of whom were an outstanding success. Another newcomer was Arthur Dolphin, who replaced the retired David Hunter as first-choice wicket-keeper. In 1913 and the unfinished 1914 season, Yorkshire finished 2nd and 4th. Lord Hawke played only a few matches in 1909 and formally resigned as captain in 1910. He was succeeded by Everard Radcliffe, who held the post until the end of the 1911 season, and then by Sir Archibald White, who led the team until the outbreak of the First World War in August 1914. Yorkshire won the first post-war championship in 1919, a year which saw the debuts of Herbert Sutcliffe and Emmett Robinson, and remained a dominant force in the county championship until the Second World War. They won every year from 1922 to 1925 and 7 more times in the 1930s. The team won 25 games in 1923, for instance, with Rhodes and Roy Kilner doing the double in these matches alone, while 4 other batsmen scored 1,000 runs and 3 other bowlers, including George Macaulay, took 100 wickets. Wilfred Rhodes retired in 1930, taking 73 wickets and scoring 478 runs in his final season at the age of 53. J. M. Kilburn wrote in the Yorkshire Post, he had bowled at W. G. Grace, and he bowled at Don Bradman. At 20, at 30, at 40 and at 50 he had shown himself master of his world, and his kingdom was never usurped. Rhodes was replaced by Headley Verity, another skillful slow left-armer. In 1932 Verity performed the greatest bowling feat in first-class cricket, 10 wickets for 10 runs against Nottinghamshire at Headingley. Percy Holmes and Sutcliffe had a record opening stand of 555 against Essex at Leighton in 1932. Len Hutton began his career in the 1930s. Large crowds flocked to the cricket after the Second World War, with 47,000 people attending the 3 days of the Roses match at Bramall Lane in 1946. Yorkshire won the first post-war championship. New players after the war included spinner Johnny Wardle, all-rounder Brian Close and fast bowler Fred Trueman. Another newcomer, Bob Appleyard, became the first bowler to take 200 wickets in his first full season in 1951. The 1950s were dominated by Surrey, who won 7 successive championships. Yorkshire had internal problems which were resolved before the 1959 season, in which Yorkshire recovered the title under Ronnie Burnett. The 1960s saw a new Yorkshire team emerge that dominated English cricket. Brian Close was made captain in 1963 and won the championship in his first season. The team included Fred Trueman, all-rounder Ray Illingworth, wicket-keeper Jimmy Binks, and Test batsman Geoffrey Boycott, Doug Paget, Phil Sharp and John Hampshire. The team began to break up after winning a third successive title in 1968, and Close was controversially sacked in 1970. There followed a long-running current of unrest in the club. There was sadness too in 1973 when Bramall Lane, the first home of Yorkshire CCC, was closed to cricket after over 400 first-class matches and was converted into a specialist football stadium. Geoff Boycott captained Yorkshire for most of the 1970s, but success eluded the team even when Boycott left Test cricket for 3 years to concentrate on the county game. He was sacked as captain amid much furore after the 1978 season. Ray Illingworth returned from Leicestershire as team manager and, in 1982, at the age of 50, took over the captaincy. Yorkshire finished bottom of the 17-strong county championship for the first time in 1983, but won the John Player League for the first time. There was further controversy when Boycott was not offered a new contract. The outcome of this was that the General Committee resigned and Boycott, having already been elected to the new committee, was reinstalled as a player. Meanwhile, Brian Close became chairman of the Cricket Committee. Success continued to elude Yorkshire, although Phil Carrick led the team to a Benson and Hedges Cup triumph in 1987. Yorkshire put themselves at a disadvantage from 1968 until 1992 by insisting that all its players must have been born within the historic county boundaries of Yorkshire, while all the other county teams strengthened themselves by signing overseas Test players. In 1992, the birth qualification rule was first modified to include those educated within the county, a dispensation that allowed Michael Vaughan to play, and was then abandoned altogether. Yorkshire's first overseas player that season was 19-year-old Sachin Tendulkar. 2001 to present. Yorkshire finally won the county championship again in 2001 when the captain was David Bias. Yorkshire have had mixed success in the first decade of the 21st century but finished a close third in the 2010 championship under Andrew Gale. There had for many years been a controversial issue about the apparent inability of players from Yorkshire's large ethnic minority population to make their way at the club. Tendulkar was the first Asian player to represent Yorkshire, but he was an overseas player. It was not until 2003 that Dewsbury's Ismail Dawood became the first British-born Asian to play for Yorkshire. He was followed by Ajmal Shahzad and Adil Rashid, who have both represented England. In 2007, Azim Rafiq, as a member of Yorkshire's academy team, became the first player of an Asian background to captain England at any level when he was appointed U15's captain. In the summer of 2012, Rafiq stepped in for the injured Andrew Gale to captain the team in 60 T20 matches, becoming the first player of Asia origin to lead the county, as well as the youngest captain in the club's history. The club were relegated at the end of a disappointing 2011 season, leading to major restructuring in the coaching staff, with former Yorkshire and Australia player Jason Gillespie brought in as coach. After regaining promotion swiftly, Gillespie set about revamping the side, enticing Ryan Sidebottom to return to his home county. county, as well as signing Jack Brooks and Liam Plunkett, allowing Yorkshire to build a fearsome pace attack. With the excellent batting of Gary Ballance, Alex Lees and Adam Lyth, coupled with the signing of New Zealand's Kane Williamson as overseas player, Yorkshire took Durham to the last game of the season in chasing the title in 2013, eventually finishing runners-up in 2014, in a bid to regain a domestic trophy, and as a major statement of intent, Yorkshire announced the signing of Australian opening batsman Aaron Finch to join the side for the domestic NatWest T20 Blast competition, and fill in for Kane Williamson during the county matches where he was away with New Zealand. Finch, who hit a world record 156 off 63 balls in an international T20 for Australia, is widely regarded as one of the best and most explosive T20 batsmen around. Although Yorkshire were unable to progress past the group stages of the T20 Blast, they sealed the 32nd County Championship title with a game to spare with victory over Nottinghamshire at Trent Bridge on the 12th of September 2014. Yorkshire followed up a successful 2014 with an even better 2015, winning the 33rd County Championship title with a record wins and points total.